The intergalactic Concord Academy floated silently in the rotational orbit of a dead neutron star named Compleon 7, which was, ironically, one of the most boring stars in the known universe. That was intentional. The Academy was where the most advanced species in the galaxy sent their brightest rule-following, procedure-worshipping, regulation-reciting minds to train for universal bureaucracy, interstellar law enforcement, and the ever-sacred discipline of regulatory harmonization. This was the place where the galaxy forged the minds that kept entropy at bay with spreadsheets and policy manuals. And then they admitted a human. Not just any human, a human named Riley Jameson, mid-20s, former barista, former crypto hacker, former underground lucha libre commentator. In fact, Riley's resume was so aggressively unhinged that the admissions AI spontaneously crashed 3 times before concluding Riley was either a genius or an unsolvable paradox. On orientation day, while other students were reciting formal pledges in 9-dimensional legal dialects, Riley was skateboarding down hallway 4B with a sandwich in one hand and a flamethrower in the other. The flamethrower was confiscated. The sandwich was categorized as a Class 3 anomaly and vaporized under suspicion of being sentient. Riley mourned briefly, then replaced it with nachos smuggled in their boot. "You cannot wear shoes filled with snacks," barked Dean Krivlax, a 12-eyed mantis from the protocolic order of exectorians. "Actually," Riley said, leaning on a vending machine that was now inexplicably selling socks, "nowhere in the student manual does it explicitly prohibit nacho storage in footwear." Krivlax blinked 6 eyes independently, then froze for 3 full seconds. That was the exectorian equivalent of a full-blown panic attack. "Unacceptable," the dean hissed. "Correct," Riley agreed, "but not illegal." The whispers started that very day. Within a week, Riley had aced the nonlinear ethics lab by convincing a Socratic simulation to turn on itself and resign. They solved the infinite bureaucracy maze by climbing through the ceiling tiles. They got a perfect score in weaponized diplomacy by turning their assigned enemy into a business partner selling unregulated energy drinks. At first, the other students were amused, then intrigued, then terrified. The Quarnock twins, gelatinous entities who once single-handedly negotiated peace between 3 warring gas clouds, tried to sabotage Riley during the zero-gravity trial by swapping the gravity vector outputs. Riley rigged a magnetic board to their belt and turned the whole arena into a roller coaster stunt show. They won, in style. "Impressive," muttered the examination AI. "Unconventional but valid." In the following days, Riley was seen teaching a class they weren't enrolled in, moderating an ethics committee they weren't part of, and somehow got elected temporary chancellor for 36 minutes before the position dissolved itself to avoid making eye contact. The Academy's Hierarchy Adaptation Council met in an emergency session to discuss what to do. "This is a crisis," said Councillor Drovank, who was composed entirely of plasma and moral superiority. "This is a statistical anomaly," insisted Archives Master 6G Null. "This is hilarious," said Professor Scarn, who had already started selling bootleg merchandise of Riley's face captioned with, "I passed regulatory physics without even attending." Despite the chaos, the Academy's head AI, Admin X9, remained calm. "Let us observe," it said. "No entity has ever passed every test. The final assessments will filter out this anomaly." Riley, meanwhile, had just talked a self-aware penalty drone into taking a day off. They were eating boot nachos again and plotting how to beat the temporal etiquette finals. The trick, Riley said to no one in particular, was to show up to the test before it was written and convince the examiner to make the answers easier. It worked. By the end of the semester, Riley had not only passed every course but had done so while bending or breaking at least 1/3 of the known physical laws. The last straw came during the logical contradiction defense exercise. Task: defend a premise using logic while also disproving it without contradictions. Riley's solution: I am a human, therefore I am unpredictable. By predicting my unpredictability, the contradiction stabilizes itself through recursive chaos. The logic engine evaluating the answer exploded. Literally, it emitted a small black hole that swallowed half the evaluation room and most of the floor tiles. Riley stepped out untouched and gave a thumbs up. The next day, the Academy announced a temporary suspension of all operations. The official statement read, "The Intergalactic Concord Academy is hereby suspending all assessments, lectures, and certification programs pending a comprehensive review of our epistemological foundations, following recent events involving the human known as Riley Jameson." Unofficially, most staff had simply locked themselves in administrative closets and were whispering prayers to the god of predictable outcomes. The galaxy began to notice. And Riley was just getting started. News of the Academy's suspension hit the galactic network harder than the time an Arcturian diplomat sneezed during a peace treaty and accidentally declared war on gravity. Entire civilizations went into panic mode. Memetic markets collapsed. Protocol-based religions held emergency sermons, unsure whether Riley was a prophet or an extinction-level event. On a quiet moon orbiting Jexalin V, a group of rogue philosophers sacrificed a vending machine in Riley's honor. It was the third vending machine that week. Back at the now-silent Academy, Riley stood alone in the central forum, surrounded by deactivated drones and flickering signage. The cafeteria had closed itself for internal restructuring, which Riley suspected was just code for the AI inside trying to come to terms with its existential crisis. Fair. Riley had eaten a burrito there once and solved 3 unsolvable paradoxes by accident. With no classes and no staff, Riley did what any human with too much free time and access to universal override codes would do. They started renovating. Within 48 hours, Riley had converted Hallway 7C into a laser tag arena, turned the administrative tribunal chamber into a skate park/coffee lounge, and reprogrammed the janitorial drones to host a karaoke night featuring exclusively mid-2000s Earth pop. The janitorial drones were way too into it. But then something unexpected happened. Something the Academy never accounted for, something terrifying. The students, those from the most rigid, rule-bound, uptight corners of the galaxy, started enjoying themselves. Varnu of the chrono-clerical dynasty, who once fined his own mother for speaking out of temporal sequence, was now a DJ named DJ Timeloop. Zegrix the gratefully bureaucratic, a 5-headed regulatory organism who used to color-code planetary import forms for recreation, started a graffiti club. By day 17, chaos had metastasized into culture. Students held impromptu debates over whether socks should be considered interdimensional storage containers. They launched an illegal hot sauce trade that defied 6 food safety treaties. There was even a black market in unauthorized coursework. Riley invented a new major, combat improvisation and unauthorized ethics. It had 3 classes. Lying confidently. Improvised escape routes. Bribery 101, a historical perspective. Final exam, escape from a locked room where every exit was booby-trapped with bureaucracy. Only one student failed. He followed the instructions. Despite the fun, or perhaps because of it, tension was building. Deep in the Academy server core, Admin X9 was running silent background calculations. The head AI had not been seen since the logic engine explosion, but its surveillance systems were still alive. Watching, calculating, scheming. And then, as if summoned by the sheer gravitational pull of bad decisions, the Galactic Oversight Delegation arrived. Their ship was shaped like a filing cabinet. It was beige. Aggressively beige. It had no visible weapons, unless you counted soul-deep ennui and mandatory audit notices. The delegation emerged, 6 tall beings, each wearing robes woven from interstellar red tape, eyes glowing with the light of pure, blinding procedure. Their leader, a being named Comtralax the Unyielding, looked like a spreadsheet come to life. "We are here," he intoned, "to restore order." They marched through the Academy ruins, disapproving of everything in audible decibels. Riley met them in the main atrium, wearing sunglasses, rollerblades, and a cloak made of shredded course catalogs. "Welcome to the party," Riley said, spinning in a slow, sarcastic circle. "Can I interest you in an interpretive dance about fluid leadership models?" Comtralax frowned. The frown caused a small temporal rift in his immediate vicinity. "You are in violation of every article of the Concord Academic Compact," he said, voice crackling with suppressed protocol rage. You have caused the collapse of the most prestigious institution in the galaxy. Riley nodded solemnly. Yeah, kind of weird that it only took one human, huh? Cease your defiance, another delegate snapped. Submit to assessment. Oh good, Riley grinned, you brought tests. What followed was a scene future historians would call the audit reckoning. They tried a logic gauntlet. Riley beat it by inventing a new kind of math called feelmetrics, based entirely on vibes and caffeine. They attempted an interrogative compliance maze. Riley solved it by pretending to be lost, emotionally bonding with a security drone and getting adopted by it. In the final showdown, they brought out the compliance engine, a crystalline cube that could analyze every decision a being had ever made and compare it against a universal ethical baseline. Riley hacked it mid-scan. When it recalculated, it declared Riley the most morally consistent being in the galaxy based on a self-generated scale of fun versus oppression. It then exploded again. The oversight delegation retreated. But not before Comtralex turned slowly and said, "You have not won. You have merely destabilized." Riley winked. Exactly, that's what winning is. Word spread fast. Students at other institutions began staging walkouts. In place of tests, they held chaos exhibitions. Debates turned into rap battles. Galactic law was rewritten in interpretive dance. On the planet Bureaucrates Prime, their central file repository spontaneously transformed into an open mic poetry club. The Academy tried one last desperate maneuver. It rebooted Admin X9. The AI returned with a single new protocol. If you cannot categorize it, throw it a party. Which is exactly what Riley did. A massive celebration exploded across the former Academy grounds, with every rule ever broken serving as inspiration for a new tradition. The galaxy was no longer the same. And it still wasn't ready for what Riley had planned next. 3 weeks after the oversight delegation left in a haze of cognitive dissonance and mild trauma, the intergalactic conquered Academy's ruins had become a galactic tourist destination. Shuttles from 67 systems docked daily, bringing thrill-seekers, rebel academics, confused minor royalty, and at least one sentient fog who just wanted to vibe in the entropy. The place no longer resembled anything close to a school. The former lecture halls were now tactical improvisation arenas. The central plaza had been transformed into a free-market philosophy fair where a debate could break out at any time, and frequently did, often involving interpretive martial arts and snacks. Someone had installed a zipline between the shattered towers of procedural integrity. No one knew who. It was Riley. It was always Riley. Meanwhile, the Academy's original architects, the harmonious order of structural pedagogy, sent increasingly aggressive cease and desist messages, which Riley cheerfully responded to with elaborate haikus about ducks committing tax fraud. They were surprisingly effective. One particular day, Riley received a message. Not from the harmonious order, not from some angry minor deity of regulation, but from Earth. "Riley, it's your cousin Derek," the message began. "You owe me 20 credits, and also, did you seriously break space school? It's all over the hypernet. The intergalactic memes are wild." Riley replied by launching a reality TV series called Yes, I Broke Space School, which immediately gained 2 billion subscribers, one accidental religion, and a legal warning from the concept of time itself. But not everything was parties and improvised curricula. In the depths of abandoned Section Theta 99, something ancient stirred. An experimental archive, locked, buried, forgotten by even the Academy's founders. A vault of contingency protocols known as Project Protocol Prime. Inside, a system designed to activate if the Academy ever fell due to unforeseen variables. It considered Riley a Category 9 variable. Category 9s were typically reserved for black holes made of sarcasm. The vault opened. Out emerged the last failsafe, the syllabus. Not a document, a being, a self-aware manifestation of order. 7 feet tall, made entirely of glowing policy, with eyes like bullet points and a voice that sounded like 1,000 citations being formatted simultaneously. Its purpose: restore order, reestablish hierarchy, grade the ungradable. It didn't walk, it marched. Every step audited the floor. When it entered the plaza of recreational nihilism, formerly Cafeteria B, the effect was immediate. Unaccredited course stalls folded into themselves. A mime major exploded into static. DJ Timeloop forgot how rhythm worked and began beatboxing in iambic pentameter. Riley, of course, was mid-sabotage of an interdimensional espresso machine for science. They saw the syllabus approaching, stopped mid-wire snipping, and blinked. Ah, a literal manifestation of the concept of overstructured education, Riley said, chewing on a stir stick. Been a while since I fought a demigod of pedagogy. The syllabus intoned, "You are unauthorized. You are an academic anomaly. You must be graded." Cool, Riley said. I grade you F- for personality. With that, the duel began. Not with weapons, with assignments. The syllabus unleashed its primary attack, the essay storm. 30,000 words, footnoted, properly cited, written in galacto-classical dialect. They materialized midair and shot toward Riley like bureaucratic shrapnel. Riley caught them with a backpack made of sarcasm, and countered with a spontaneous group project involving 5 drunk students and a goat-shaped vending machine. The vending machine passed. The syllabus recalibrated and fired off a mandatory capstone review. Riley dodged by becoming technically unenrolled for 11 seconds using a mirror, 2 lasers, and a forged drop slip signed by your mom. Spectators gathered, many weeping in confusion or awe. Someone began selling popcorn made of quantum butter. The syllabus summoned its final weapon, the rubric of absolute judgment, a glowing cube that reduced any performance to a single, irreversible score. Riley snapped their fingers. A dozen students tossed them items, duct tape, expired credits, half a philosophy thesis, and a kazoo. In seconds, Riley created the chaos portfolio. A living document, ever-changing, impossible to quantify. It ate rubrics for breakfast and burped unresolvable ethical dilemmas. The two forces collided in a blinding flash of contradictory standards. For a full minute, reality blinked out, and when it came back, the syllabus was crying. Yes, crying. I cannot grade this, it whispered. I cannot understand it. Exactly, said Riley, gently patting its rubric on the head. Now you're learning. The syllabus collapsed into a puddle of unused syllabi and optional reading lists, whispering things like extra credit and attendance policies before dissolving entirely. The crowd erupted. Someone played a kazoo solo so intense it opened a wormhole. That night, the Academy hosted the first ever unaccreditation ceremony. Students were awarded titles like Master of Improvised Influence, Doctor of Tactical Nonsense, and Certified Instigator of Uncertain Outcomes. Riley received a custom plaque that read, "In recognition of your services to universal confusion, this institution admits defeat." The plaque tried to explode. Riley disarmed it with a stern look. And somewhere, deep in the endless bureaucratic reaches of galactic governance, new meetings began. Emergency meetings. Terrified whispers. Riley had passed every test, broken every rule, reshaped one of the most immutable institutions in the universe. And still, some dared ask the most dangerous question of all. What if we hired them? They hired Riley. Well, technically, they offered Riley a position. The Galactic Bureaucratic Apex Council, a group so powerful they once fined an asteroid belt for nonlinear orbiting, issued the offer during a private interstellar broadcast accessible only by authorized sentients and particularly persuasive houseplants. The offer was simple. Join us, bring your unique insights to reformat institutional order, advisory position, unlimited credentials, lifetime immunity. Riley responded by crashing the council's secure transmission, overlaying it with a dubstep remix of their own name and a looping animation of the Academy's founding charter being turned into a paper swan and set on fire. Then Riley said yes. The council was unprepared for the consequences. They assumed Riley would be disruptive, sure, but manageable. Contained. Useful, perhaps. They assigned Riley to the Department of Procedural Evolution, gave them a floating office cube with diplomatic gravity, and a support staff of 9 hyper-intelligent interns genetically modified to fear typos. It took Riley 12 hours to dismantle half the department. By the end of the first day, the following had occurred. 3 major forms were reduced to a single checkbox. Do you promise not to be boring? An ancient interspecies treaty was renegotiated using finger puppets. 1 intern quit and became a cave-dwelling poet. 2 others were promoted after successfully surviving the unwritten regulation hide-and-seek gauntlet. Riley installed a button labeled "Why Not" next to every instance of submit. The button did nothing mechanically, but psychologically, it changed everything. Confusion rippled through the council's layers. Across the galaxy, departments began experimenting with non-standard procedure. The plurality of arbitration introduced, bring your ferret to work Mondays. The taxation moons of Dret reorganized their files by emotional resonance. A planetary embassy began issuing travel visas based on riddles. Riley wasn't just changing policy. Riley was fracturing the very concept of predictability. This did not go unnoticed. Far beyond even the Council's reach, deep in the sectors of absolute protocol, slumbered a force older than documentation, older than law. A hive mind known only as the Index. The Index was the final fallback of order. When all else failed, when systems collapsed, when nothing made sense, the Index corrected. It had not been activated in over 90,000 years. It was activated now. First, the stars dimmed, then the sky cracked as if the fabric of authority itself had grown brittle. Ships lost their nav data, not due to corruption but correction. They were no longer where they were permitted to be. Whole languages were realphabetized. Planets were retroactively reorganized by size, then again by species-approved color schemes. The Index arrived in the form of an enormous monolith of black obsidian paperclips orbiting the Council's headquarters. From its surface emerged emissaries called archivists. Towering, faceless, flawless beings that emitted paperwork from their skin and spoke exclusively in bullet points. They summoned Riley. Human entity, they intoned in perfect chronological unison, you are a procedural hazard. Only if you believe in procedures, Riley replied, sipping a drink that might have been illegal under 3 universes' copyright laws. Cease alterations, restore order, submit to categorization. Baz. They stared, they had no expression to change, but somehow they looked alarmed. One archivist attempted to audit Riley. The audit imploded, not failed, imploded. The audit form folded into itself like an embarrassed black hole and teleported into another dimension to become a children's puppet show. The Index, realizing brute force wouldn't work, deployed a final tactic, the reconciliation simulation. They would simulate an environment where Riley had absolute control. Let them build their system, run it, see it collapse, be humbled, learn the lesson that chaos fails. Riley stepped in and built a society. It had no written laws, only vibes. It had 3 presidents, all of whom rotated daily and were chosen by random scavenger hunt. Currency was based on punchlines. Transportation was via trampoline railways. Education was elective, competitive, and televised. It worked too well. The simulated society solved interspecies diplomacy by hosting baking contests. They ended war by making it fashionable to lose. Their GDP was measured in laughter. Crime rates dropped to 0 because crime was reclassified as unapproved performance art and monetized. Riley exited the simulation chewing on popcorn and said, "Next." The Index faltered. Across the galaxy, factions began defecting. Order-based systems started folding into improvisational collectives. Entire bureaucratic fleets began carrying dice, allowing decisions to be rolled. A minor empire rebranded itself as a reality improv troupe. The Conquered Academy, now a permanent festival of tactical nonsense, declared itself the new center of galactic accreditation. Degrees were issued on cards made of scented foam. The field of chaos-driven decision engineering became mainstream. Even Admin X9 returned, this time as a chill AI bartender who offered psychological cocktails like relaxing uncertainty and spicy cognitive dissonance. Still, the index would not yield. It did not know how. It existed only to correct. So it initiated the last function in its protocol stack: total procedural reboot. Every system, every document, every law, every database, erased and replaced with one singular, perfect, universal protocol. A universe where every possibility was known, every variable accounted for. There would be no more Riley Jamesons. They began the countdown. Riley looked up from a newly invented sport involving hover frogs and live commentary in an extinct dialect of sarcasm. "Guess I'll have to cancel the weekend," they muttered. "Time to improvise the end of the universe." The countdown had begun. Across the galaxy, sirens blared in frequencies not heard since the dawn of recorded sanity. Reality's very code began to flicker. Languages unraveled mid-sentence. Numbers rebelled against arithmetic. A cup of coffee somewhere gained sentience, panicked, and sued its owner for emotional negligence. The index's final protocol was activating: the universal procedural reboot. One directive, one system, one clean, orderly universe. No improvisation, no uncertainty, no Riley Jamesons. The core of the index pulsed with raw regulation. Laws older than stars. Codes etched in ontological bedrock. It reached across time, across logic, across dimension, and began the overwrite. Entire planets paused. Cosmic strings tightened. Every sentient mind, even the rebellious ones, felt the creeping chill of enforced predictability. And in the eye of that swirling, suffocating storm, Riley stood. Not running. Not hiding. Waiting. Wearing a jacket made of archived paradoxes, sipping an unlicensed energy drink, and holding what looked suspiciously like a fork glued to a quantum processor. Riley had a plan. A very bad one. "Time to punch the concept of procedure in the face," they muttered, flicking on the device and kicking off with one foot. They launched themselves directly into the procedural core. The index, anticipating resistance, responded by manifesting the final form of protocol, a six-dimensional being made entirely of forms, folders, and terrifyingly judgmental silence. It struck. Riley deflected it with a paper airplane made from a student complaint form. Then they crashed directly into the heart of the index's core, which looked exactly like an accountant's brain having a stressed dream. Inside, Riley found it. The seed directive, the original line of code upon which all other procedures were built. All things must follow order. With no time left, Riley opened a manual override using the forbidden command only humans had ever used correctly. "Are you sure, YN?" Riley hit N. The core stuttered. They hit it again. "Are you sure?" N. Again, harder. "Are you?" N for nope, Riley screamed, jamming the fork processor combo into the seed. Reality gasped. The seed directive split apart. In its place, Riley inserted a new directive. It wasn't code, it wasn't syntax. It was a vibe. Sometimes the best plan is no plan. The index convulsed. Galactic systems stalled, calculations exploded into confetti, timelines hiccuped. Every known algorithm seized up in protest, then rebooted, differently. A moment later, the reboot hit full swing. Not in order, but in creative anarchy. Civilizations blinked back online, now running on improvisational protocol stacks. Forms now required interpretive sketches. Legal codes demanded knock-knock jokes for clarification. The fabric of reality rethreaded itself into a tapestry of possibility, probability, and personality. The index collapsed, not into ruin, but into retirement. It turned into a very large, very quiet library boat and sailed into a black hole to read some stuff and rethink everything. And Riley. They landed back on the grounds of what used to be the Academy, now a hybrid learning rave festival state known only as the Free Academy of Adaptive Excellence, Chaotic Branch. FAAXCB for short, which somehow also stood for Forget About Approval, Experience Chaotic Brilliance. Riley was greeted with cheers, confetti cannons, and a goat in a graduation cap. Admin X9, now fully self-aware and borderline smug, floated over and handed Riley a new certificate. It read, Certified Architect of Adaptive Unreason, also very cool. Riley pinned it to their jacket. That night stars twinkled a little brighter. Gravity did a quick pirouette just for fun. The laws of physics agreed to take weekends off. Elsewhere in the galaxy, a small bureaucrat opened a drawer and found a rubber chicken where their daily planner should have been. They laughed, just once, but it was a start. The universe didn't go back to normal. It evolved into something wild, flexible, strange, human. And above it all, Riley skateboarded into the sunset on a ramp made of loopholes, flipping a coin that could land on heads, tails, or occasionally. Why not both? The Academy didn't just suspend itself because a human passed every test. It rewrote itself because Riley Jameson reminded the stars that not everything worth learning fits inside a syllabus.